Welcome to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Discover the personal drive, professional journeys, and business strategies that have made a real impact. It's success from the inside out.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're chatting with Alejandro Bejarano. Alejandro is a business development advisor at CAWST, a co-founder, president, and CFO of Mental Health Ecuador, and the founder of Isla, Bonita. So welcome to the show, Alejandro. Do you want to just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you're involved in?
Matt, thank you so much for having me on the show. My name is Alejandro. I'm usually involved in social impact projects. So my two main projects are a mental health NGO called Mental Health Ecuador Foundation, and a recently launched project called Isla, Bonita, which is a glamping resort focused on well-being in an Ecuadorian island in Esmeraldas.
Awesome. Can you maybe dive in a little bit more on that, on what the NGOs are there for, what the impact that you guys have had, what areas of the world you've operated in?
Yeah, so Mental Health Ecuador Foundation started amid the pandemic. So in 2020, a lot of group of psychology students and other professions, we realized that there was no mental health resources in the country, especially those virtual resources that people really needed during the pandemic. So we started with a live chat. It's an anonymous and free service for mental health first aid. And the idea is that people, whenever they needed, they could access that live chat. As they access any travel agents, that there's like a section, say, speak with an agent now. We realized that it was very important for people to access that service, but with a professional in psychological services. So we started with that service, but because of the pandemic, it also highlighted more demand on mental health services. Now we also have in-person services, we have workshops, we have even rural community tourism with mental health, and we do some local therapies, support groups. So any service that we think is gonna impact the well-being, mainly of Ecuadorians, but also the rest of Hispanics, it's gonna be there. And until now, we have reached more than 1 million people, especially in Ecuador. And what people like the most about this service is that it's accessible even to the rural people, and that it's talking with a real human, because right now we see that AI is taking over.
Yes.
But we know that some services like mental health, it requires that human connection. So we're keeping it like that for a while.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. You're originally from Ecuador?
Yeah, that's my country of origin. Yeah.
Okay, and what brought you up to Canada, in Calgary specifically?
Yeah, so I came 9 years ago. I came with my family, so they applied for the permanent residence, and we came just to take advantage of it. And I came to finish high school, then I started university. But as I mentioned, most of my projects are focused on Ecuador, because it's always good to remember where you come from. And for me, sometimes migrants, they forget why they came to another country, right? There were a lot of problems in their country of origins. So my idea is, if you want to change those, instead of just investing your resources, your talent, your time somewhere else, you always have to remember to invest back in that country. This is what I do with my projects.
Back to where you came from. That's great. And why specifically mental health? I mean, I know you said there was kind of the need for it in that country, but what drives the passion behind that?
Yeah, so it's a personal story. So when I was going through university, I did go through depression and suicidal ideation. And I noticed firsthand that there was no available resources. And with mental health, it's an interesting topic, because there's no one size fits all. Like, it's not like therapy works for everybody. For some people, it might be helpful to travel, to speak with someone. For some people, they are more reserved. So I realized that mental health has to be so accessible that it shows a lot of mental health tools, so that you can adopt them and see what works for you. And that was lacking in the country, also in Canada. Like, I think mental health organizations, they have to focus on providing the most tools that they can, so that people see what fits them and what helps them to support their mental health at the end of the day. So it was a personal story, but then it became more of a passion to also help seeing succeed the country and the people, because mental health is connected with every area of life.
Yeah. Do you see mental health problems, are they similar? Like, is it the same in Canada versus Ecuador, or are there intricacies based on the different locations?
Yeah, there's differences for sure in the general causes of it. Right now, even we're working on an application to an initiative called Grand Challenges Canada, and they are targeting Ecuador. So they did a study of what were the common problems in Ecuador, especially for youth,
Okay.
affecting youth's well-being. And one of the main problems was the violence that's happening in Ecuador. So I will say the stressors are kind of different. Here in Canada, we have more peace. You can go out and not be anxious that someone
Right.
might rob you or that you might get killed. In Ecuador, people might have that fear. But I think the effects are basically similar. Like I think the main effect, just to summarize, about not having the tools to take care of your mental health, is that you cannot succeed in life. That happens everywhere in the world. Even
Yeah.
in Canada, if you don't have the necessary tools, you won't be able to have an entrepreneurship. You won't be able to succeed in school because you won't have motivation, concentration. So the same happens in Ecuador. You will also have a lack of opportunity to succeed just because you don't have the tools. So we see mental health as the basis of everything, of empowerment, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, being successful in school, at your jobs, even in relationships. You need to have the tools to have good communication. So we
Yeah.
see it as a basis, and that applies worldwide.
Okay. And what type of funding do you guys get? Like, is there government funding? Is it private funding going into it? Where does that come from?
So we are very new, so we currently don't have any major sources of funding. Most
Mhm.
people are volunteers, including myself.
Yeah.
Right now, we do have like the low-cost therapies that I told you. We also have these workshops that we have. They are free, but if they want to pay for certificates, they can do so. So it's more
Okay.
like volunteer-led initiatives. We also do raffles. So it's more like initiatives that we try at least to survive, if you can say so, every month. But for sure, the goal is to try to find government funding, international funding, and maybe some donors that would like to support this initiative.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's great. What were you doing before you started the NGO? I mean, obviously we talked, there was a couple different uh, companies or whatnot that you've been part of, but what was that history like?
Yeah, so before the foundation, well, I was a student, but I
Yeah.
always had like this project mindset. So I did have a clothing brand that was kind of inspired in the same method. We were sharing stories of people improving the world through fashion. So they were like modeling the clothing, and then we were sharing their stories. So I did have some small projects. I was involved in volunteering, but I think my motivation was always to try to improve well-being, even in the fact that I have a vegan activist group. So for me, well-being does extend not just to the humans, but to
Mhm.
anyone that has a brain and a nervous system to feel pain, to feel happiness. So it extends to animals. So I was always involved as well in animal activism before. Right now, I'm still a little bit involved, but the foundation work and life takes most of my time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It sounds like it's a pretty busy initiative for
It
it.
is, yeah,
And
which is good.
yeah, no,
It's a
oh,
good problem
absolutely,
to
absolutely. Yeah.
have.
What sorry, I should say, how many people are you actively working with? How many people have been engaged throughout this process?
So you mean more like the members, internal
Yeah,
members?
yeah.
Yeah, so we have right now 30 members in the
Hmm.
organization. Most are in the capital city, which is Quito, but we are also expanding into Cuenca and Guayaquil, which are the other main cities. But we also have board members internationally. We even have a person in Edmonton. Her name is Ana Maria Ortega. She's one of the board members. So
Okay.
with her, we have been able to also impact Hispanics and even the rest of like people in Canada and the US. We recently had a workshop with the Calgary Catholic Immigration Society. So I think our vision definitely involves trying to help as many people as we can, because as I said, mental health tools can be applied to every context. Right
Yeah,
now, of course, most of our services are done in Spanish, but if we do have people that speak English, then workshops can be expanded to Canada, to the US. We
right.
can consider migrants, Hispanic migrants in the whole world. We're currently working in a project to support migrants in Australia. So I think definitely with talented people that we have, diverse professions, I think we'll definitely try and impact the most people that we can.
Yeah. And how are typically people, I don't know if you'd call them a client or patient or whatnot, but how are they typically accessing those resources? Is it online that you guys are showing or reaching out to them, or they're reaching out to you, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have the two services, the online and the in person. So
Yeah.
the online is mostly through our website. It's a saludmentalecuador.org. So they can access the live chat, as I said, like a travel agency that you will go to the website and there will be a place that you can access the live chat. Our therapies are also virtually, so we use Zoom to help our patients. And then in the more in person, that's when we wanted to access the people that we couldn't access during the pandemic. So that was the funny part. We realized, yes, we're helping people, there's a lot of demand, but what about the rural communities in Ecuador that might not have a good internet access or might not have access at all? So we said we have to be in person for rural people. So we have
Yeah.
some alliances with three rural communities in Ecuador. And we definitely do the services in person. We do workshops. And we also launched rural community tourism with mental health.
Okay. So what is your vision ultimately for the group then? I mean, you talked about being able to offer services in English for Canadians and whatnot as well. What does that look like? Are you looking to do this throughout the world?
Yeah, so the funny part about mental health is that the demand has grown so much that we sometimes have to say no to specific clients or institutions that want to work with us. And if I'm realistic, maybe in the future we will have to also limit who we are targeting just to do
Yeah.
things better and to concentrate. So right now in this year, definitely we're trying to expand. It's like a proof of concept. We've tried with Canada, we've tried with the US, we're trying with Australia. So I guess in 2024 we'll take all of the data that we need, and then by the end of this year, we're going to analyze and we'll define, hey, do we want to expand the services, not just in Spanish, but also in English? Maybe do we want to register an organization in Canada, in the
Mm.
US, in Europe? That might also help us with more funding and also be able to do more projects. So that will be soon to come. But I think realistically, we will stick with the Hispanic community. We definitely already decided that Ecuadorian, that was our mission before, just helping
Yeah.
Ecuadorians. It has to change because we also didn't consider Venezuelan migrants and other migrants that are going
Right.
to Ecuador in a fast rate. So then we changed it to just inhabitants in Ecuador, to just like consider everybody. And then we changed it to Hispanics. So I think right now, definitely that's what we're sticking in to Hispanics, because our services are already in Spanish. We don't have to have a huge lift
Yeah.
on drastically changing how personnel to translate, to do the services in English. We just have to improve the marketing, right? We just have to improve how our services will be accessed by people that speak Spanish around the world.
Okay. And I would think because mental health has been fairly big and a big push into it over the last probably couple decades here, and a lot of the stigma has come down around mental health. So I think there are quite a few groups that drive to help people that need that. But my guess would be that a lot of that is English already, and it's probably the countries like Ecuador or Spanish speaking countries that don't have the same resources for mental health as we are fortunate enough to have in Canada. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, to an extent, it's true. Some of our services have been inspired by Canada, the US, but I do think, as I said, there are many innovative solutions happening right now that consider people's mental health. Like even rural community tourism with mental health is like a weekend that people will go to these rural communities and they
Okay.
might be able to interact with rural people. And by this interaction, they don't just support the rural people's mental health and with the workshops, but also themselves. The tourists will also feel better after that weekend because they share. So I don't see that in Canada. I don't see it in the US.
Yeah.
I don't see that we're taking a lot of initiatives to involve community, right? As we
Yeah.
know, the Western hemisphere is more an individualistic community. So I think there's both ways. We can both learn. In Ecuador, we can learn more like maybe tools that have been applied in Canada, the US, or Europe and adopt them. But I think even Canada, US, and Europe needs to adopt the tools that are mainly focused in community, because community, we know, is a very high effect, has a very high effect in people's well-being.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So you said you were in university. What did you end up taking in university? And when did you graduate?
So I graduated in 2021. I
Okay.
took a Bachelor of Commerce with a minor in psychology. So that
Okay.
minor in psychology was actually added once I started this NGO. So I just started with business. And then I said, I really love this topic. So I
Yeah.
added a minor in psychology.
Okay. And what pushed you into the business route?
And I think, well, since I was young, I was always a person that tried to do businesses. I used to have my lemonade stand when I was young. I remember when I used to live in Quito, I lived next to a store, to a community store. Like people will
Yeah.
go there. And I
Like a little
remember I
corner
was very
store kind of
young.
thing.
Yeah, convenience store. So I remember I went to that store literally next to my house. Like picture it next to my house.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
bought some stuff and I will put my same store outside my house, like higher price, more expensive. So of course they saw me and they were laughing because I was young. If I
Yeah.
was older, I'm sure they wouldn't be laughing. But that was like I think I always had that mindset, and I used to think that with businesses I was able to also improve the world. Before my thought was more like I'll become a millionaire and then improve the world.
Yeah.
But while I
Yeah.
was studying business, I realized it's my time that's more worth it. I don't have to wait to become a millionaire and then improve the world. If you know how to manage a business, an organization, how to manage in general, how to manage, I think you can create social impact. So that's
Yeah.
what also kept me into this path of business,
Okay.
is
Okay.
management in general.
Yeah. And your team is kind of all over the place, it sounds like. Some on the ground in Ecuador, some not. What's it like to go and manage that group from all over?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think based on what I've analyzed before and after the pandemic,
Hmm.
that one of the good things, or the only good things that the pandemic. So the good thing about the pandemic is that we started to adapt more to the virtual environment. So even managing a team, it became easier, and people
Yeah.
were also getting more used to working from home. So volunteers, they will have their hours per week, but they will decide when they will want to invest these hours. So even managing a team has become, in a way, easier and more efficient, because
Hmm.
sometimes in person it becomes more like a lot of meetings, a lot of like talking before implementing. I think if you are managing in the virtual environment, you give them a chance to first start themselves any project, and then maybe a meeting to revise that project, to have like more punctual questions. So I would
Right.
say like managing virtually has helped me to be more efficient. I'm sure if I was in person, I wouldn't be able to manage everything and still focus on all of the areas that I focus: strategy, finances,
Yeah.
human resources. So definitely, I think that's a good part of the virtual environment. People do say that they miss it, or that they need some like human connections. So we try to make some like integration events, some meetings. Every time I go to Ecuador, I try to meet my team as much as I can.
Mhm.
So we've seen that balance. It's kind of a hybrid, but not so hybrid that per week you will have this hybrid method. But every month, at least, we'll try to see each other. And we've seen a lot of connection that hasn't been lost due to this virtual environment
Yeah.
management.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's very cool. Um, who are these people that are volunteering? Where's your connection to them? How did that happen?
So luckily, the foundation has grown a lot in social media. So we have
Oh,
like engagement of 30,000 people per month. We have over
wow.
5,000 followers. So whenever we have a new launch for seeking volunteers, there's a lot of people that apply. So luckily, we've been fortunate that there's a lot of people that want to help. We also see that the Ecuadorian culture is one of the most entrepreneurial, but also the one that wants to help the most. So seeking volunteers has never been difficult task in the country. And sometimes it's also connections, like you will see volunteers and you will see board members, and they will refer you to someone that they know. And the good thing about our foundation is that we don't just seek psychologists or students in psychology. As I said, we consider mental health as a holistic approach. So if we're also implementing rural community tourism with mental health, we try to seek volunteers that have a tourism background, for example, or management, finances,
Okay.
accounting. Like
Yeah.
it works exactly like any other organization. Like NGOs work exactly like any other organization. And
Yeah.
I do want to say that the key of our success and our growth is because we're one of the only organizations in Ecuador on the mental health industry that don't only have psychologists. Like we literally have
Okay.
professionals from all over the world. Even myself, I'm not a psychologist,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm managing this NGO. So the teamwork is what makes this successful, because someone might have the perspective of psychology to implement a project, but someone might have the perspective of administration to be able to implement it better. Someone will have the background of measurement to be able to monitor and then monitor
Okay.
for improvement. So I think that whole team, even the board members, they come from diverse backgrounds, even
Yeah.
doctors, even business owners. So that has made the foundation very strong, because we know that mental health influences every area of life. And by having every area of life in the background of the organization, it helps us make projects more effective.
Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. So how often are you traveling down to Ecuador?
So I try to go once or twice per year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
now
I
with
assume
this
it's not
job
the
that
cheapest, it's probably not the cheapest
no,
flight.
no, and also I don't have a lot of time now
Yeah.
that I'm working full time. And so I try to at least once. My mother is there as well, my family is there. And as I said, I want to see my team at least once per year.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's great. Well, it certainly sounds like you've got the passion for this and the passion to help people that are in need. And I assume that the people volunteering have that same passion. And I think that's a really cool thing to see people like yourself being selfless and going and trying to help those people. So, kudos to you guys, kudos to your team for that. If somebody wanted to learn more or engage your services or reach out, where would they go to find that?
So you can find the foundation in www.saludmentalecuador, mental health Ecuador translated to Spanish,
Yeah.
.org. And then our social media is the same. Instagram is at Salud Mental Ecuador, Mental Health Ecuador. And we also have Facebook, LinkedIn. But if you go to our Instagram, you will see all of the links. And definitely reach out if you want to also do some collaborations. If you speak Spanish and you are living abroad, let us know. If you speak English and you want us to talk more about potential collaborations as well, let us know. I think the important thing is that people take action. Our social initiative is what's going to improve this world. And with mental health, you improve this world from the root, because people will be empowered through life to have adversities. Adversities will come every day of the life.
Yeah.
So we understand that like adversities will never stop. So our NGO knows that mental health tools are the basis to take any adversity as opportunities, or at least have peace in mind while you are facing those adversities, and then improve the world and be empowered yourself. So yeah, I welcome you all to send us a message, and hopefully we can do some collaborations.
That's great. That's great. Well, Alejandro, certainly want to thank you for joining us on the show today, and wish you guys the best in everything that you're doing down in Ecuador and with the rest of the Spanish speaking communities as well. So good luck to you guys, and yeah, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt.
You've been listening to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Want to be our next guest? Visit beyondwealthpodcast.ca/guest. See you on the next episode.